When doing longer series like the Heroes Reborn books and the Secret Six, one of the first things that I need to do is break it down according to the stories. That gives me what I'm working with and the arcs that I'm going to be following, as well as giving me some idea of how many episodes a particular series is going to be. When I was examining the six and breaking things down, this arc in particular, Depths, is the arc that I was most looking forward to rereading. Unhinged is good, don't get me wrong, but it relied so heavily on callbacks to Villains United or the Secret Six miniseries that it just didn't stick to my ribs. Depths is the first arc that did. No arc stands out better in my mind than Depths, so it's what exemplifies the book for me. Unhinged was about bringing the cast together. Depths is about taking it apart. My name is Ben, and this is Comic Book Breakdown episode Secret 6.6, Depths. Penciler Nicola Scott and Doug Hazelwood return for this arc after last issue's fill-in, but they don't stay on cover duty. Instead, Daniel LuVisi handles covers. LuVisi's artwork is all digital, but it fits with the tone of the book. The characters are on model, but there are a lot of shadows, darkness, the six are swathed in smoke or dust. It's pretty jarring when compared to the previous covers by Nicola Scott or Cliff Chiang, but it isn't bad artwork. It actually kind of reminds me a lot of Stefan Sejic's artwork, which is definitely a compliment coming from me. The book opens 2 months ago, where we meet the Six's new client. They don't know him yet, but we'll get there. Mr. Smith, spelled with a Y instead of an I, is an older man. He's dressed all in white, his white hair swept back from a cold face that's devoid of emotion. He walks with a cane and one hand tucked behind his back. With him is a woman a full head taller. She's dressed simply in a t-shirt and a knee-length skirt, and she has 2 kukris strapped to her back. The final member of their party is Emil, a short, balding man. He's dressed all in khaki, and he will not shut up. The trio descends in a freight elevator into some kind of mind, Emil complaining all the way. He hates the dark and the filth, but he especially hates the people. As he whines, Emil refers first to those people as cattle, then, a word bubble later, as swine. Mr. Smith corrects him, demanding that he be consistent. The point seems to miss Emil, but I bring it up to highlight Mr. Smith's personality. He is very exacting and wants things done exactly his way. We'll see this continue on throughout the whole arc, but this is kind of the germ of that idea. Emil has brought Mr. Smith and Guyana into the mines because of one of the workers, a woman named Mina, who has warned them of methane gas. She comes from a family of miners, and she knows the smell. One wrong swing from the pickaxe, and the whole mine could go up. Smith brushes some dirt off of his shoulder and tells her to get back to work. Mina spits at him, refusing. Guyana steps forward here wordlessly, drawing her blades and pressing them to Mina's throat. She says that Smith stole them from their homes. He's made them all into slaves, and that's all bad enough. But she will not touch that wall. Kill her if you have to. But she's not going to die the way so many of her family did. Smith asks Emil if she has any family currently in the mines, but no, she does not. No one will miss her. Smith, however, says that he will miss her. So he points at a random man and orders Guyana to kill him. And then another. Guyana draws her pistol after hurling her kukri, and at first Mina is confused. She is the one refusing to work. The people shouldn't suffer for this. Eventually she cracks, scratching at her own face, begging for him to stop, swearing that she'll be good. She'll work hard. He asks about the gas, and now she denies it, kissing at his feet. Emil pushes her away, cursing her and praising Smith's technique for breaking these animals. There is no technique, Smith comments. He turns to leave, ordering Mina to be the one who buries the bodies of those that were killed. Emil is disgusted by how a little blood reverts these people to swine, and Smith corrects him. They're cattle. Consistency, Emil, please. If you weren't expecting it, let's say it here now. Here is Gail Simone putting the six up against people that society despises. Slavers. And we actually get a decently interesting group here. Mr. Smith is calm, cool, and collected, unnerved by nothing. The deaths that he causes don't bother him at all, but losing Mina would have. So what motivates him? Why is he okay with killing half a dozen people, but not Mina? I can't honestly suss out an answer here, so hopefully we'll learn more about Smith as the book goes on. Emil is the perfect partner for Smith, voicing the things that Smith is probably not saying, but is potentially thinking. He acts, where Smith stays calm. He's also a little rabid, constantly reined in by Smith's cooler head. Guyana, on the other hand, says nothing, but she does a lot. She handles the killing for Smith, and is as quiet as he is, but as eager as Emil. It's almost like the three are just pieces of one person. Smith the brains, Emil the mouth, and Guyana the body. I actually like this setup, but we still don't know all of what's going on here in the bigger picture, or how the six are going to fit into it. Obviously, we're just at the start of the story, so that's going to be introduced later on. Before we get into that, Bane is having a nightmare. He's being held in a prison, barbed wire holding him against the wall. 2 guards move down the hallway and enter his room. Using wire cutters, they free him, declaring as much. They're both dead, their grinning rictus smiles staring at him. This snaps Bane awake, shouting in fear. He takes a moment to calm himself, and then goes into his bathroom. The Scandal Savage, armed with her lamentation blades, wearing her costume bottoms and an A-shirt, waits there for him. Is he looking for these? She opens her hand, revealing several vials of venom. Bane doesn't approve of a young woman sneaking into a man's bedroom. Someone else might misunderstand. But Scandal knows why she's there, and that's all that matters. The Lowlies have reported that Bane is screaming in the night recently. Bane admits that the nightmares are new to him. Normally, he doesn't believe in them, but it seems that they've finally found him after all these years. Scandal reaches out to him emotionally, asking if he has a real name. And yes, he does. It is Bane. Scandal sighs, explaining that she understands his addiction, but he helped her when she was suffering. The only reason that he took the venom was to help her. So, if he wants the venom, she'll leave it for him, and she'll go. Bane pauses for a second, considering it. Then he tells her to destroy it. He must be free of it. Scandal says that's good, and leads him back to bed. She doesn't sleep with men, and states as much, and Bane is aware of that. He's never had any intentions in that direction, and Scandal hushes him. She pulls down her pants, revealing a pair of boy shorts, and climbs in next to him. She tells him that what she's doing doesn't mean anything, but that it does mean something. Bane understands. It means that there is still good in this world, and that life is worth living. Scandal hugs him like a giant teddy bear. She tells him that tonight will be the most difficult, but she won't leave him until dawn. Aww, how goddamn adorable are these two? Like, legit, this moment, this relationship, is a large part of what sold me on the six. It's just so unexpected in general, but it's also so perfect in its execution that it's really hard to dislike. As someone who was then unfamiliar with Bane, this was kind of a mind-blowing moment for me, and it has stuck with me ever since. This scene is also the first time that Scandal returns Bane's father-daughter situation affections. He's been playing surrogate father to her for issues, and at best, Scandal has played along. After the loss of Knockout, she really needed someone to care for her, and Bane was willing. But here, she demonstrates an understanding of Bane that we weren't expecting and hasn't been set up. She also demonstrates sympathy and compassion, equating her loss of Knockout to his loss of Venom. I, personally, wouldn't put those on equal footing, but the Venom makes Bane incredibly strong and, some could argue, whole. The same could be said of Knockout for Scandal. Also, fun fact, Bane sleeps in the nude. I'm not really sure what to make of Bane's dream sequence, though. The prison that he's held in and the barbed wire that he's held by are obvious nods to his upbringing in the Santo Marco prison. The placement of the wire mimics the ties that Junior used to support Bane for his torture, though. That leads me to think that the guards could maybe be Aaron and Tig, the two gentlemen who tortured Bane at Junior's behest, but, they bear no resemblance to them. And, last Bane knew, Tig was still alive. Junior only killed Tig after the Six left that construction lot back in Unhinged. Aaron doesn't bear the bite wound that Bane delivered either, which you'd think would be the thing that he would feel guilty for. I can see the venom withdrawal giving Bane nightmares. I'm just not sure what his nightmare is indicating. I do know that it's reminding us of how Bane values freedom, which foreshadows our upcoming problems in the rest of this arc. The issue then jumps to Ireland, where we find Jeanette and Loughton. Dialogue between them informs us that they're meeting a client here, but Jeanette is feeling nostalgic. They're at the very spot where she met her first husband, where she was beheaded, and she pulls at her choker to show us the proof, and where she threw that husband to his death. Loughton reminds her of him, actually. The clients arrive then, and surprise, it's Mr. Smith, Emil, and Guyana. Emil informs them of some local color, specifically how the men would pluck eggs from the cliff, and how they would die when doing so, and how pointless it all was. Loughton shrugs. Eggs are good eating. And given how often Catman makes them, I would guess that the Six would be experts. Anyways, Emil offers them a good job. It's just 1 month of work, and they'll have the world's gratitude. And money, sure, lots of money. Before they can get into details, though, Emil, or rather Guyana, needs to administer a psych evaluation. The tall woman sprints forward and hefts Loughton up by the neck and dangles him over the edge of the cliffs with ease. Emil explains that they've had others fail them in the past. Their methods are unpalatable to many, but they're necessary. This is how empires were built, how some of mankind's greatest achievements were made to happen. And there's the added bonus that there is nothing in the world that can compare to the feeling of owning another human being. How does Mr. Loughton feel about that? Floyd smiles. He was actually thinking about trying for a threesome with the ladies, but hey, Emil can keep talking if it makes him happy. Mr. Smith is impressed by this. He informs Loughton that they share an acquaintance, someone called Mockingbird. He'll need the rest of Loughton's team on board the plane within 12 hours. They've got the job. Now, hold the freaking phone. Does Smith mean Lex Luthor Mockingbird? As in the guy who put the Six together to begin with? Because the Six still don't know who that Mockingbird was. Lex's identity was revealed to us, the readers, but he pretty much just abandoned the Six during their final fight with the Society back in the Villains United miniseries. Is Lex actually back? And really, would he trust the Six not to botch this job up given their shared history? And what would Lex's interest be in some slaving operation anyways? To be fair, there is the possibility that this is just a bluff, or it could be another person using the name Mockingbird. It still indicates that Smith or his ally know more about the Six than they probably should. When I initially read this scene, I thought that Simone was just growing the bond between Jeanette and Loughton during their conversation. She's opening up to this man, sharing her past with him. And while I do think they are bonding, Simone is also setting up Guyana's threat. We don't know the distance from the cliff to the water. We could easily assume the Deadshot could survive a potential fall. But Jeanette tells us that it's 7,000 feet to the water and that her husband did not survive his fall. So when Guyana picks him up, we know from the opening scene that she has A, no problem killing, and that B, this fall is lethal. Loughton could very well die here. But he doesn't. So hooray! This also confirms that, at some point in the far past, as Jeanette's husband looks pretty much like a Viking raider, Jeanette was married, she was killed, came back from the dead, and at some other point, killed her husband. I'm not quite sure of the series of those events, because this is comic books, and that could be really different, but I'm guessing that we'll get there. The six board Smith's plane and are on their way, lightning streaking through the sky. A large box marked with caution symbols rests between them, taking up a huge amount of space in the plane's cargo hold. The six are only now discussing Mockingbird's identity. And wait a minute. They knew that he was Luthor? When did that happen? I don't remember that happening. Real Lex called Scandal during the final fight, told them all their families were safe and that he was no threat to them, and then jetted off to fight Alexander Luthor Jr. I mean, I think this is just a writing mistake, but I guess I could have missed some minor piece of continuity. I don't know where, but it's possible. Anyway, an explosion rocks the plane as they're hit by rocket fire. The pilot puts them down at the auxiliary runway, the rough landing having Scandal and Bane hold hands. Ragdoll notices this and is intrigued. Scandal tells him to shut up. Once they manage to land, the plane is still on fire, and they're still being fired upon by rebel fighters. Deadshot and Catman put their masks on, preparing to go to work, and Emil demands that they defend the artifact. While they're talking options, Guyana, who was the only one not bothered by the explosions, by the way, calmly walks to the back of the plane and lowers the loading ramp. She runs outside and starts removing heads from bodies. This woman is at least as good as the six, if not probably more efficient. Deadshot then follows her out, followed soon by Catman, and then the rest of the six. They make short work of the rebels, who flee when reinforcements arrive. Among those reinforcements is Mr. Smith, pleased with the six's performance, but not yet 100% satisfied. Mina, the woman from earlier, sits in the Jeep with him. He tells her to run. She's free. Once she reaches the fence, she is free to leave this place. Smith then approaches the six after she started running, telling them that a prisoner is escaping. Deadshot sights her in and informs Smith that it's just a woman. He orders him to shoot her. Scandal just starts to talk some sense about this when Deadshot fires. One bullet goes right through Mina's heart. At least she didn't die in the mines. Scandal confirms the kill. Deadshot adds that, he didn't want her to suffer. This wasn't personal. It was just a job. Scandal then notes the extensive calluses and abuse to this woman's hands. She just now realizes that they aren't working for wardens on this job. They're working for slavers. This is clearly news to Scandal. Emil says that he told her friend, meaning Deadshot, who is still unsure of exactly why everybody's upset. Even Bane is disgusted at the idea of killing a slave. But Mr. Smith is satisfied now. The team performed well under pressure and live fire, they defended the assets, and they took orders well. Welcome to Devil's Island. It's where you all belong. Holy crap, if that's not a great setup. I left this out of the narrative to keep things running smoothly, but when Smith pulls up to the crash site, there's another woman with him in the Jeep. She is tall and muscular, dressed in a green and white costume. She's clearly a character, I just didn't know who going into this, and she's bound at the wrists and has some kind of collar on. Smith refers to her as Artemis, a name that I'm particularly unfamiliar with in the DC universe. She is super important later, so I wanted to make sure to acknowledge her presence here. She is front and center on the cover to issue 11, so yeah, she is going to matter. Issue 11 opens with Smith and his entourage leaving the scene, eager to show the Six the rest of the island. They order the guards to have someone take care of it, meaning Mina's body, but Loughton says that he's got it. They go back and forth on this for a minute, coming very close to violence, but Smith finally backs off. He guesses that given how unsecured the area is after the rebel attack, it would probably be best to have his guards defend them. Loughton can handle the baggage. They all climb into some jeeps and move on. Catman notes Artemis's presence, but Scandal finds it hard to believe that it could actually be her. Jeanette hopes that it isn't. She hates Amazons. Ragdoll, meanwhile, mocks the others for their hypocrisy regarding the slavers and the death of Mina. They've worked for murderers and despots before. It's a little late to be drawing moral lines in the sand, you know. Bane, meanwhile, notes that it's past Scandal's dinner time and demands that she be fed. Smith commends Bane's priorities. Food and sex have always been necessary for men like him to function. Bane shoots that down real quick, threatening Smith's lower body. He apologizes, realizing that love, not pleasure, is Bane's concern. As the six eat, Smith explains his vision. Basically, it boils down to all of history's lasting monuments having been built by slaves. Everyone knows these creations, the Great Wall of China, the pyramids of Giza in Egypt. People flock to them all year long. He argues that we know in our hearts that slavery must exist for such works to be done. So, he wants to enslave the world. The population of the slaves must be drawn from every strata of society, and then they must be put to work. It's the only way to be fair. Many of the six make pointed arguments against Smith's plan, but he seems to have an answer for all of them. When Scandal asks just what it is that he's building, Bane answers for him. It's a prison. Smith responds with a smile. Yes, it is a prison, but it thinks it's a nation. Oh, great. What does that mean? The scene with Loughton wanting to carry Mina's body kinda confuses me. I can understand his willingness to kill her even if I don't agree with it. Loughton makes no moral calls. He's just a paid, self-serving agent. We've seen this kind of behavior before. He's told to kill her, and he does so. There's no malice or emotion involved. So why is he then willing to go to war over her body? There's no concern for the rebels that he gunned down. He's even told by Smith, his employer, that someone else can do it. So if this is a matter of doing the job, he's in the clear. But he still stands. Does Loughton feel guilty over her death now that he knows that she was a slave? Perhaps the care and concern that Scandal shows affects Loughton, and now he regrets how little he respected Mina's life. So maybe he respects her in death? It's hard for me to tell, but it does give Simone that moment of the six against everyone else. Even divided, they'll always defend each other. At least, that's the status quo that Simone wants us to expect. I appreciate Ragdoll playing devil's advocate here. The six have murdered their way through their whole existence so far, so it's odd that some of them are growing scruples. What makes Smith different from any of their other employers? Why is enslaving someone worse than murdering someone? Dahl sees no difference between the two. And I get the feeling that Dahl could really go either way. Enslave or don't, kill or don't. Neither option really matters to the immoral Ragdoll. Outside of Ragdoll and Loughton, actually, the rest of the cast's distaste for slaving makes sense. Bane dislikes prisons, Scandal doesn't want to be like her father, Catman values the freedom of the wild, and Jeanette has been imprisoned before. Even if they don't have moral objections, they have personal objections, and that's going to make this arc pretty messy. Then we have Smith's vision, to build a nation on the backs of slaves. There's a practicality to Smith's idea that I can kind of understand. Using slave labor can allow people to build or create large monuments, and it has classically been used to build nations throughout mankind's history. But having something like the Egyptian pyramids isn't worth the lives that it cost, nor the slave labor that was necessary. Just in terms of practicality, we've built taller, grander, more complex things since then using paid labor. I don't feel like Smith's argument that people are drawn to them because of slave labor holds up either. We're drawn to these monuments because they are impressive, yes, and I believe that we honor them because they cost so much to create. We can marvel at modern structures just as easily, and they were built with paid labor and safety measures, and they didn't cost us as a people or a society so much life. This man is willing to spend lives to accomplish what exactly? Build a prison that people will travel to and marvel at? I just don't see that happening. Even if you discount the moral problems with this, I don't understand what the practical solution here is. However, to her credit, Simone does write him charismatically, doing her best to sell him, if not his ideas. This is the first time that Smith really comes alive, smiling as he speaks, a true believer to his own gospel. He's one part zealot, one part salesman, and his pitch clearly bothers the six. They're uncomfortable, and they argue with him throughout the scene. Scandal actually doesn't even eat during the discussion. The plate before her remains empty. In one of the panels, Bane does see this, and he looks at Scandal in concern, but he doesn't chastise her for her lack of eating either. I think that he understands her protest, even if he is able to eat. Scandal doesn't go into her refusal to eat, nor is it brought up by anyone. She could feel ill over this whole situation, working for a slaver, witnessing the murder of an innocent woman. But again, we've seen Scandal do some hardcore stuff in our previous episodes. I think that Scandal refuses to eat food that's being served by her enemies. She's already made up her mind how she feels about this mission. She's disgusted by what happens here, and so she refuses the kindness and punishes herself. This is such a small detail. We can only see Scandal's plate in 2 panels, but it's clearly there for a reason. That is some great subtle storytelling, and it says so much about Scandal without actually having to take the time to say something about Scandal. Having pitched the Six on how he'll rebuild the world, Smith shows them what he's building next. But during the scene transition, we move over and follow Artemis. A trio of guards has moved her into her own small, single-celled building. They attach chains to her wrists, ankles, and neck, leaving her upright and spread eagle in the center of the room. One of the men, Lieutenant Ginty, molests her, and she threatens to remove any hand that touches her. Ginty backhands her, an action that is caught by his captain when he enters the room. The 3 men are reassigned away from any women and will face disciplinary action. He then dismisses them. Then he addresses Artemis. The captain asks if she's okay, and informs her that she can file a complaint against the men. He also apologizes and offers her water. Does she need anything? But she doesn't accept anything from him. Next, he explains that he's different from those men, and here, Artemis does agree with him. He's worse. Are those men bad men? Yeah, sure they are. But they admit to it. They own it. But this man, their captain, is deluding himself. He isn't a good man because he opposes her molestation, not when he's also holding her against her will. Captain Torres understands how hard it must be for her to understand what they're doing here, the good that they can accomplish with it. But she says that she does. It starts off well enough, with the belief in change being quite the powerful idea. Then it gets worse from there. She goes quite into detail, promising Torres that eventually there will be hidden graveyards for aberrations like her, if there aren't some already. But she is not the problem, nor is it the system that they're trying to deviate from. He is the aberration here, someone who's trying to do good using bad methods. The system is already corrupt. And she asks him to remember that those who chain an Amazon don't die well. Then she orders him to get out. Man, this whole issue is just one terrible conversation after the last. First, we get Smith's whole pro-slavery pitch, and now we have Artemis kicking this captain in the emotional crotch. Not that she's wrong, she's just so blunt and honest that it feels bad for Captain Torres. So we have Simone setting up Artemis' situation here, and how the character feels about it. We see pervy guards, which helps to reinforce the idea that the people working here are scum. But then Simone introduces Torres, the kind-hearted scum. His concern for Artemis immediately makes us like him because we sympathize with Artemis. And so Captain Torres can't be that bad, right? But he is, and she calls him out on it. You can't endorse bad policies and then be horrified when the people who endorse those policies are, get this, bad people. When people are dehumanized and treated as things, just tools to accomplish a goal, you can't claim virtue just because you're hoping to accomplish something new or innovative. This is one of the smart things about this issue. Simone is showing us the acceptable degrees of evil. The kind of killing that the Six are used to, that's bad, but within the confines of the story, it's not as bad as slavery. And the Six are ultimately going to have to decide if they're okay with that. Artemis is showing us that good, kind-hearted people can support terrible ideas because they hope that things will work out. So, will the Six do the same? Ragdoll would argue why not. We'll see. Before Smith can leave Emil and Guyana to show the Six to their quarters and mission, Jeanette asks why Artemis is here. Smith admits that she has been quite the problem. She's resisted brainwashing, drugs, torture, enhanced interrogation. But once they do manage to crack her, That'll be like discovering a new continent. Emil then escorts them to the facility that's being built, talking the whole way. The prison they're building will house every felon in the world, and it is an intimidating thing. Their quarters are nearby, and Emil shows them the rest of the way. He explains that they purchased the island's government, and most businesses will be allowed to continue. This thing is all legal. Well, it's mostly legal. Alright, it's kinda legal. He leaves them, and the six separate. Scandal brings up the whole slavery thing to Catman. He doesn't like it either, but, they took the job. He promises that they'll discuss it in the morning. Jeanette and Loughton share quarters and a bed. He's pretty okay with the idea of the prison, actually. If Batman won't kill the Joker, better to have him locked up here than in revolving door Arkham, right? Jeanette doesn't agree, wondering if political prisoners would be housed here as well. Loughton really doesn't care one way or the other, and the pair settle in for the night. Later that night, Jeanette snaps awake. She dresses and, smells her way to Artemis's cell. I didn't know that was a thing that banshees could do. Anyway, she breaks the lock and, after some taunting, frees Artemis. The Amazon at least recognizes that Jeanette is a banshee, but I don't know if they have history or not. Jeanette does say that she hates Amazons, but she hates the idea of her being held here even more. So she tells Artemis to leave, and that now she owes her one. Artemis, however, won't leave without the other Amazons that are being held captive. Jeanette sighs. Fine, where exactly are they? Which, of course, is when the rest of the six arrive. They're in their PJs, but they are also armed. Catman orders Jeanette not to do this. They took the contract, and they gave their word. She doesn't care. They aren't going to break Artemis, they're just going to abuse her until there's nothing left. She knows. She's seen these kinds of prisons before. She spent 2 years in Kilmainham Gaol in Dublin, with no room to lie down and sewage washing over her feet at night. She was kept in the gulags as well, something she and Scandal have mentioned before, actually, and that was the first place that she ate frozen human flesh. Loughton says that he hears her, but if she does this, there isn't going to be a six anymore. Jeanette shrugs. She's okay with that. Bane joins her. Blake encourages Scandal to join him, her distaste for all of this clear. Ragdoll's just confused. Scandal tells Blake that he can't win this fight, so he punches her in the guts with his knuckle claws. Ding ding! Let's get it down! The six start to brawl, and it gets personal real quick, but it also doesn't last for very long, because Wonder Woman drops into the fray. She checks Artemis for a pulse, and she doesn't find one. So she turns to the six, wanting to know who killed her sister. Y'all better duck and cover. As issue 12 opens, Jeanette tells the others not to tell the Amazon a thing. They don't owe her anything. There's a page-long pause as the six are silent and Wonder Woman waits. She tells them not to call her that, and she calmly demands an answer as well. Deadshot asks that if he shoots at her, will she do the bracelet thing? She tells him to try. After a brief moment of consideration, Deadshot opens fire. Wonder Woman blocks all 9 of the bullets. She then steps forward and flicks him, and he's knocked back onto his butt. Jeanette steps forward and decks Wonder Woman in the face for hitting her lover, but Wonder Woman is largely unaffected. She spits a tiny bit of blood and then returns the punch, knocking Jeanette through Artemis's prison. Scandal then runs to her friend's side immediately. Deadshot, holding a bleeding nose, asks Catman if he has a plan. He replies, quote, "Stand here and try not to bleed on her, I guess," unquote. Shot adds that he heard Batman took her down once. So how about it, Blake? Bat up. As he watches Wonder Woman tear off a chunk of the building with her bare hands, he nods. Yeah, I bet that's just how it happened. Jeanette tells Scandal that they can't win this fight. That's fine, Scandal says that they'll run, but Jeanette isn't interested in that. She knows what she needs to do. And Scandal needs to run. She returns to the Six and then informs them that Jeanette is about to do something very bad, and they need to run. The flow of the issue changes pretty dramatically here, so let's break for a minute. Gail Simone is a huge Wonder Woman fan, so her eventual inclusion in the Secret Six doesn't really surprise me. Simone was actually writing Wonder Woman's ongoing series at the time, and no, this is not a hidden crossover, so don't worry. And she had been for months, so her vision of the character is pretty well solidified by now. While easily the most physically powerful being on this island, Wonder Woman does not come in guns blazing. She wants answers, and only responds with force when prompted by someone else's use of force. She's angry, but calm, and Scott's depiction of her movements is very controlled. Watching the Six go up against her is like watching teens at camp fleeing from Jason Voorhees, or watching cavemen armed with sticks fighting against tanks, or men riding dragons throwing wolves at maggots. There's a relentless unstoppability to Wonder Woman here that normally feels empowering, but here it's much more threatening. This is a promise of defeat for the Six, which is why Catman doesn't even bother with it. As a Marvel fan, I've often dismissed Wonder Woman. I mean, come on, the shorts, the lasso, who cares? But she's honestly frightening here, given our empathy with the Six, and she's powerful, and it's great. I don't normally get to see this kind of Wonder Woman, and it's a scary change, but it's a welcome change. Even when Catman was going up against Batman during Unhinged, I didn't really feel any fear, but the stuff with Wonder Woman is pretty good. Emil also thinks that the arrival of Wonder Woman is pretty gosh darn scary, and so he woke Mr. Smith up. They'd been expecting Wonder Woman, which is exactly why they hired the Six, who are shockingly actually fighting her. Smith is wildly impressed, but it's not like they're going to last. He orders Emil to wake the beast. Wonder Woman, meanwhile, holds Jeanette in the air with one hand around her throat. She wants to know where the rest are, and Jeanette punches her. Wonder Woman barely feels it. Then she returns the blow, dropping Jeanette to the ground. They do punchies for a while, and Wonder Woman is like a rock. She asks where the other Amazons are, again, which caught me a bit off guard. It just occurred to me that aren't the Amazons on the mystically hidden island of Themyscira? Are they not there anymore? I figured Artemis was like Wonder Woman, she'd just gone rogue and left at some point, but this means, what, that more of them left? Jeanette knows about as little of this as I do, and she says as much. Slamming her head against the stone building, Wonder Woman is prepared to beat an answer out of her. The rest of the Six, at Scandal's urging, cover their ears. Jeanette's complexion goes pure white. Black patches of skin encircle her eyes, hollow her cheeks, and frame her nose, giving her face a skull-like appearance. Sound erupts from her, Blake shouting, "What sort of ungodly thing makes this sound?" It's the sound a banshee makes as she relives her death. Helpless at Jeanette's feet, Wonder Woman not only hears but feels the experience. Jeanette recants her terrible, slow, painful death, the inhumanity of it, the fear and pain and terror. She was made to be lower than the lowest animal, and now Wonder Woman has experienced it too. She sits on the ground when she's done, catatonic and foaming from her mouth. Oh, holy bamfin' hell! Even with me knowing Jeanette's hidden nature and how she fits into the arc, this scene is still downright chilling. Simone has established previously that Jeanette is the strongest physical member of the Six, but that's also pretty much all that she's done so far. So the big reveal here was amazing to me and caught me totally off guard. A DC fan would know that Banshees are actually established in the canon. There's a character named the Silver Banshee who has fought Superman and Wonder Woman before. Simone basically took that kind of concept and then built Jeanette from the bones of it. I also like the way that Simone and Scott express Jeanette's power here. Having Scandal, the only member of the Six who has history with Jeanette, warn the Six tells us that she's seen Jeanette do this before. It also shows us that she's actually afraid, which means that we should be afraid too. Once Jeanette unleashes her wail, there's a digital vibration that's applied to the 2 pages, giving us a visual representation of an auditory effect that we can't see otherwise. I'm not sure who would have applied that effect, if that would have been the penciler, the inker, or the colorist, but it's a nice job nonetheless. We also see the landscape surrounding her has been affected too. Artemis's former cell is barely a foundation at this point. All of the grass is blown away from Jeanette, and the tall palm trees lean away as well. And Jeanette's description of her death is super creepy. She says everything super factually. There's no emotion or pain to it. There's a distance to her speech thanks to the passage of time. I almost wanted to read the whole thing. It's just so chilling and terrible, but there's no way that I could do it justice. But it has the desired effect, and Wonder Woman is, for now, down and out of this fight. Scandal cautiously approaches Jeanette. They need to leave. The 6 are done. Half of them are willing to side with the slavers. They need to leave before the fighting starts again. But Jeanette isn't quite there. She kicks Wonder Woman over. A dark world, the realm of death, calls to her. To all of us. The image of her executioner's axe, bloody and chipped, flashes through her mind. And then she collapses. The rest of the 6 have finally caught up. Bane gingerly lifts Artemis's body and she groans. So, hey, good news. She's still alive. Wonder Woman will be maybe a little less angry when she finally comes to. Bad news, though. There are people coming. Blake can smell them. He tells Scandal to grab Artemis and Jeanette, get their gear, and go. They can buy them that time, at least. Scandal asks about Wonder Woman, but they're going to be keeping her. They need to give Smith something to make up for the rest of this. Loughton tells Scandal to tell Jeanette that he's sorry. That he actually... his words fail him. But she understands. And she will tell her. Aww. Since they're leaving Wonder Woman with them, Bane warns Loughton, Blake, and Ragdoll. If you even speak to her harshly, Bane will show them a pain that will unmake them. Then they leave, Loughton commenting that they need some new losers. Secret 3 ain't got no zing to it. Smith and his forces pull up soon enough. Blake explains that Artemis has escaped and that the rest of the 6 have gone. He also warns Smith not to question how it happened. To make it up to him, though, they do have a gift. Cue Ragdoll, dragging Wonder Woman by the foot in one of the funniest scenes in this comic. Go buy this book, please. I cannot do it justice. Ragdoll is great in this. The Scandal half of the 6 have made it back to their barracks, which Bane questions. Why have they come back here when escape is their goal? What could be so important? Scandal puts on her top as she explains that they need every edge right now. That includes Bane as he was when he took Gotham. She holds up his mask and his venom. That means that they need the venom. Bane's expression is, for him, one of calm processing. She asks this of him, now, and with so little cause. It's clear that he doesn't agree with this thinking, and he's kind of insulted by it. Hell, I'm kind of insulted by it. This is why Simone had the scene of her helping Bane with his addiction. It sets up the slap to the face that this scene is. While the pair were talking, Lieutenant Ginty, the guy who molested Artemis an issue ago, is surrounding the barracks with his 2 creep friends. He takes aim at Scandal and Bane, but Artemis suddenly grabs his gun. She forces it below his chin. She told him what he would do for touching her, yes? Artemis kills him and rolls from the doorway, killing his backup quickly. Bane and Scandal peek out of the building, totally impressed by this. Artemis introduces herself and thanks them for saving her. Scandal tries to talk her into leaving with them, but Artemis will not go. She picks up the dead men's guns. She has some bastards that want killing. And in one scene, Simone has established not just how dangerous Artemis is, but how different she is as a warrior from Wonder Woman. She doesn't blink when killing those men, nor do their deaths bother her in the least bit. This is quick and economical storytelling, and I love it. In much the same way, the rest of this issue happens fast. Now that he has custody of Wonder Woman and the Blake half of the Six have proven themselves, Smith wants to show them the island's secret. This is the big thing, Smith's point of pride. As they ride down in the elevator, Loughton clues into what Smith is building. He's creating the 9 circles of hell from Dante's Inferno, isn't he? Smith confirms this. Since God seems to be unwilling to unleash his wrath upon the sinners of Earth, someone has to do it. So they go to the 9th level, and Smith reveals, imprisoned at the end of their journey, the devil. Yep, capital D devil. The devil is tied to a wooden X with barbed wire. He is large and muscular and covered in brown hair. Truth be told, he looks more like an off-brand werewolf than he does Satan. He does have some wicked-looking teeth, though, and he licks them. The devil could smell the Amazon, and he is so hungry. There's very little build-up to this moment, and to be honest, it kind of comes out of nowhere. Not just because of the lack of build-up, but really because I'm not familiar with this version of the devil. Comic books have long played with the devil or Satan as bad guys. But after the creation of the Comics Code Authority and public backlash over how comics were ruining their youths, Satan himself couldn't appear anymore. This is why Marvel has Mephisto, inspired by Mephistopheles from Dante's Inferno, actually, and DC has Necron. These are stand-ins for Satan, so they're kind of able to skirt the rules with it. This has changed over the years, as the audience for superhero comics has grown up, and both publishers have moved away from the Comics Code Authority. But despite that, those characters still see regular use. But if DC has Necron for its devil equivalent, then who the bamf is this guy? And if he is the devil, how exactly did Smith get custody of him? And then why doesn't he look, cooler, more devil-esque? This guy is a dog man, which fits the beast moniker that Smith has been using up to this point, I guess, but he isn't terribly noteworthy. I honestly forgot that this guy existed as part of this story arc, so he's clearly lacking some oomph. In an arc where everything else has been so good, this reveal just doesn't hold up. And we've got more good stuff coming, but not today, because Breakdown has received its first correspondence from a listener. They marked themselves as anonymous, so I'm not going to go into detail about their letter, but they commented on my recent string of bandwidth issues. They said that they prefer shorter over longer episodes and would rather have them hit on a weekly basis than a bi-weekly basis. And I've wrestled with that ever since I read the email. Comic Book Breakdown is, it's super inspired by podcasts like Mike Duncan's Revolutions and Dan Carlin's Hardcore History. And Hardcore History episodes can go up to 4 to 6 hours. And there's definitely a part of me that was okay with Breakdown episodes getting long because, Hardcore's episodes are that long, and I still listen to those. I'm a binge listener. I'll do 3 or 4 episodes in a row if it's available. I also really liked keeping each single episode covering an arc of something. Being able to drop a single episode that, covered Venom Lethal Protector just made sense to me, and it's nice and economical, and we're done with it. I'm aware that there are some people who only read Marvel or only read DC, and they might not have an interest in a long string of episodes about the Secret Six, which means that the longer these episodes run, the less likely they are to listen. Keeping everything contained into a story arc was my way to combat this, to get a wider variety of stories out there as quickly as I could. Except the quickly part really fell away, especially here with the Secret Six. There's just so much subtle character work going on that needs to be picked apart with these episodes that they're easily twice as long as my Heroes Reborn ones. That obviously led to my bandwidth problems and has been a pain in my butt ever since. So, I figure I'm going to give shorter episodes a try. Each episode of The Secret Six is going to cover 2 to 3 issues. This will make most arcs into 2-part episodes. So yeah, we are doubling up on our episode count, but you guys will also see them in your feed on a regular weekly basis. So thumbs up! Thank you again, anonymous writer, for your email. It was great to hear from one of you guys and had lots of feedback, both positive and negative for me. If you want to get in touch with me, there's always our email, which is cbbreakdown@gmail.com, and Breakdown is also available on Facebook and Instagram. I'm not too good at remembering the gram, but I post images from whatever particular comic the latest episode is about for the week that it's live, as well as long-form articles about modern comics that I'm reading. I've currently been breaking down Jonathan Hickman's House of X Powers of 10 X-Men stuff, and I've been doing a long-form, short-form breakdown for the 1990s era book Forceworks. Just kind of breaking it down as I've been reading it. I'm super down to talk comic books, guys. So please come on by and say hello. Otherwise, I'll see you guys next Thursday. Everyone, there are a million podcasts vying for your time and attention, and I'd like to thank you for listening to mine. If you would like to get in touch with me to share a concern, request a series, compliment me, berate me, whatever you like, send me an email at cbbreakdown@gmail.com. Otherwise, thanks for listening.